A tense few minutes on a quiet London street. Passers-by pause for a moment, unaware that they were witnessing the closure of one of the most audacious international drug syndicates of the decade. No sirens, no high-speed chase, just a brief cry of "Police!" The cold click of metal handcuffs and the sight of men pressed against a brick wall. Heads bowed in surprise. It was not a single arrest, but the culmination of a months-long transcontinental investigation that spanned two hemispheres from the damp streets of England to the sunny harbors of Australia. The men in this frame thought they were untouchable. They hid their plans behind the encryption of EncroChat, a system considered by criminals to be an impenetrable digital fortress. But every fortress has a crack, and that crack comes from the smallest thing: a photo of a bulldog, accidentally revealing the phone number on its collar. From that seemingly harmless clue, the whole network of secrets begins to crack. From this moment, the real story begins. A conspiracy to hide nearly half a ton of MDMA in the steel arm of a giant excavator, a journey across the ocean to escape the law, and a historic breakthrough in digital investigation, where the smallest detail becomes a fatal blow to bring down an entire underground empire. And remember to like and subscribe to the channel to support us with a cup of morning coffee. Thank you. At the center of the ring was Danny Brown, 53, from Bromley, Kent, a seemingly ordinary man with a troubled past. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood, Brown was exposed to the city's dark side: shady dealings in pubs, petty smuggling on the docks. He had been involved in a number of criminal activities but had rarely been convicted, and it was his experience of dodging the law that made him a key link in the plot. Working alongside Brown was Stefan Baldauf, 61, from Ealing, London, a veteran of the criminal underworld, involved in international deals and with a network of contacts spanning Europe. If Brown was the brains of the operation, Baldauf was the right-hand man who took care of the logistics, making sure everything ran smoothly and stayed out of sight of the police. Beneath them were seemingly ordinary but indispensable names: Leon Riley, Philip Lawson, Peter Murray, and Tony Borg, men scattered in quiet residential areas, ostensibly factory workers, office workers, or gentle neighbors. They had families, children, normal dinners. But underneath that shell was a thirst for illicit enrichment and a recklessness to bet everything. It was this mix of the ordinary and the dangerous that made the case so unbelievable. Unsuspecting men were running one of the most daring intercontinental British-Australian drug rings, and from here, their past began to emerge, opening up the story of a daring conspiracy that few expected. The first anomalies emerged not at the docks or the warehouses, but in the seemingly impenetrable world of EncroChat, the encrypted messaging platform that has long been a haven for criminals. When authorities quietly broke into the system in early 2020, they began sifting through millions of encrypted messages. Amid the chaos, a thread of conversation stood out: strange nicknames like Throw Thetis and Bold Move, odd references to toys and party, and anomalous signals, like a small group of people suddenly spending lavishly for no apparent reason. At first, it was all speculation, but then a single photo changed the course of the investigation. It showed a small French bulldog named Bob, wearing a collar with a shiny metal tag. When investigators zoomed in, they saw a phone number engraved on the tag, and it led directly to Danny Brown's partner. In an instant, the veil of anonymity the gang had built up over months collapsed. From that seemingly innocuous clue, police traced the true identities of the aliases, connected the dots between disparate messages, and began to piece together the full picture of the vast drug operation. A photo of a dog, perhaps just to show off a pet, became the key that opened the door to the heart of the conspiracy. And from that moment, the real hunt began. The plot was so audacious that it was disguised by a seemingly simple plan: hide nearly 448 kilograms of MDMA in the massive steel arm of a Doosan excavator, a 40-ton hunk of metal often found at construction sites. They knew that customs officials often focused on small containers, single trucks, and suspicious packages. Large, legally declared industrial equipment with proper documentation almost never came under the microscope. This loophole proved key. The excavator was loaded onto a ship from Southampton, bound for Brisbane, Australia, under the perfect cover, an industrial construction item with a carefully falsified shipping schedule. Once in Australia, the plan became more sophisticated. A fake auction was staged to legitimize ownership of the excavator, giving the impression that it was a normal transaction. But the real goal was to secretly dismantle the arm, extract the huge cache of drugs hidden inside, and dump it into the Australian underground market, where MDMA is worth many times more than in Europe, and promises huge profits. It was all coordinated via EncroChat, an encrypted messaging platform that has become a bastion of crime. Brown went by the alias Thetis, implying recklessness, while Bulldog went by Bold Move. Under these pseudonyms, they exchanged hundreds of messages, from ship schedules, port arrival times, and transit routes to warehouses, to code terms for the quantity and quality of drugs. Millions of pounds in payments were broken down and routed through multiple intermediary accounts, combining cash and cryptocurrency to cover their tracks. Each member of the group had a role. Brown was the main coordinator and liaison with the Australian contacts. Bulldog handled logistics and paperwork, while Riley, Lawson, Murray, and Borg handled transportation, warehouse preparation, and liaison with European outlets. The entire structure was designed so that if one link broke, the others could still deny it and continue operating. It was this level of calculation that made the plan both bold and dangerous. They believed the chances of being detected were extremely low, and if this shipment went through, subsequent shipments would unleash a huge rain of money. This confidence was reinforced by blind faith in EncroChat, where they believed their identities were completely hidden, untraceable. But this perfection became a fatal weakness. The more links, the more people involved, the easier it was to expose a loophole. And it only took a single photo of a bulldog named Bob, sent in a moment of carelessness, for the entire seemingly impregnable network to begin to unravel. When police discovered the true identities behind Thetis and Bold Move, they not only knew who was at the top of the operation, they also had a detailed map of one of the biggest drug trafficking operations in British Australian history. The UK's National Crime Agency, NCA, worked with the Australian Federal Police, AFP, in a stealthy hourly operation that followed the massive cargo like a shadow from the moment it left the port of Southampton. In Brisbane, during a routine security check, X-rays of the Doosan excavator revealed a glaring anomaly. Hollow blocks inside the steel arms that should have been solid. When the seal was broken for inspection, the authorities discovered nearly half a ton of MDMA cleverly hidden in the hollow. Instead of making the discovery immediately, the police secretly removed the drugs, kept the packaging intact, resealed the machine, and let it continue its journey as if it had never been discovered, making it the perfect bait for an international sting. At the same time in the UK, investigators were analyzing millions of records collected from EncroChat. Anonymous messages, bizarre nicknames, and especially reflection selfies, where the suspect's shadow was accidentally cast on a brass plate or TV screen, revealing his true face. Combining location data from phones, travel histories, and unusual financial transactions, the NCA gradually pieced together a complete picture of the network. After weeks of surveillance in the early hours of 15th of June 2020, special teams went into action. In Putney, London, Brown and Bulldog were caught in the flat where they had been hiding. The chaos of the door being smashed down, shouts of "police" echoing down the corridor, and the two ringleaders unable to fight back. At the same time, other accomplices were caught. Leon Riley in Greenwich, Philip Lawson in Basildon, and Peter Murray in Mitcham. All were stunned that the network they had thought untraceable had collapsed. Halfway around the world as the decoy excavator arrived at a warehouse in Western Sydney, AFP forces quietly surrounded it. As the two suspects, a 33-year-old from Mortlake and a 42-year-old from Greystanes, walked in to collect the cargo, the door slammed behind them, and the raiders stormed in within seconds. It all happened so quickly that the men had no time to understand how millions of pounds worth of drugs had disappeared, and how their perfect plan had been shattered by a photograph of a bulldog named Bob. By the time both operations, in the UK and Australia, had concluded, police had seized a trove of EncroChat phones, cash, fake documents, and transport equipment. Each detail became a key link in the chain of events that would eventually cement their case. What had once seemed an impregnable operation had now been a network in the hands of the law, paving the way for the landmark trial that would take place 2 years later. The trial of a massive MDMA smuggling ring at Kingston Crown Court in 2022 quickly became a media sensation across the UK. From the very first day of the trial, the courtroom was packed with the public and the press, all waiting for details about the plot to transport nearly half a ton of drugs worth around $44 million from the UK to Australia, a case that the public dubbed the Bulldog trial, stemming from a photo of the Bulldog Bob that inadvertently brought down the entire operation. Before the jury were 6 defendants: Stefan Baldoff, Danny Brown, Leon Riley, Peter Murray, Philip Lawson, and Tony Borg, each of whom played a different role in the daring scheme. The prosecutor opened with an hour-long statement showing the massive array of evidence gathered over nearly 2 years of investigation. Decrypted EncroChat messages under the handle, "Throw Thetis" from Brown and "Bold Move" from Baldoff revealed the details of the plan to hide the drugs in the arm of a Doosan excavator and stage a fake auction in Brisbane. Mirror selfies, phone location data, forged documents, and financial transactions were pieced together into a precise timeline, showing the involvement of each defendant. Danny Brown, 53, was the main coordinator, liaising directly with his Australian partners and overseeing the entire operation. He was sentenced to 26 years. Stefan Baldoff, 61, handled logistics, handling shipping documents, and coordinating from London. He was sentenced to 28 years, the maximum sentence of the group. Leon Riley and Peter Murray, who assisted in shipping and coordinating personnel, were each sentenced to 24 years. Philip Lawson was in charge of finance, managing the cash flow and creating a legal facade for the transaction. He was sentenced to 23 years. Finally, Tony Borg, who was in charge of the warehouse and transit site, was sentenced to 15 years in prison. After several days of intense debate, the verdict was announced amid heavy silence in the courtroom. In early 2025, the court continued to issue confiscation orders for nearly $1.2 million of Baldoff and Lawson's illegal profits, warning that if they failed to pay within the prescribed time limit, their sentences would be significantly increased. The trial ended, but its aftermath continued to dominate the newspapers for months, considered one of the most shocking international drug cases of the decade in the UK. The case quickly became a symbol of the EncroChat operation, one of the largest digital forensics operations in European history. The authorities' stealthy hacking and decryption of a messaging platform once considered impregnable sent shockwaves through the world of cybercrime, where drug dealers, arms dealers, and even hitmen once believed they could operate above the law. The Brown-Baldoff case became a vivid example of how a seemingly innocuous detail, such as the collar of the Bulldog Bob or the reflection in a selfie, could reveal the true identities of the aliases hidden behind thousands of encrypted messages. The success not only stopped the flow of nearly half a ton of MDMA into Australia, where the drug's value is many times higher than in Europe, but also paved the way for a series of large-scale seizures across the continent. For the investigative agencies, this was a clear demonstration of the power of international cooperation. The NCA and AFP coordinated seamlessly from data sharing to decoy tactics and synchronized raid timing across 2 hemispheres. To the public, the case revealed a shocking truth. The people behind the drug networks were not flashy kingpins, but sometimes just seemingly gentle neighbors in quiet residential areas. And from here, the term Bulldog Case entered the British-Australian criminal record, marking a milestone showing that even the most sophisticated plots can collapse because of a seemingly small mistake. The case was closed, but its echoes did not stop at the sentences of decades in prison. It left a strange mark on the international criminal record. A seemingly perfect plan was destroyed not by cutting-edge technology, but by a moment of carelessness in everyday life. The name Bulldog Case became a symbol of the fragility of meticulously orchestrated conspiracies, where a photo of a pet dog can trigger a chain of dominoes to collapse. After this case, many other investigations were expanded. A series of underground networks that seemed inviolable were gradually exposed, showing that the picture of transcontinental crime was more complex than the public had ever imagined. And from then on, every piece of evidence, no matter how small it seemed meaningless, was viewed with different eyes. It could be the missing piece to complete the whole picture of the case. If you find this story both creepy and intriguing, think about it. How many other conspiracies are hiding in the ordinary things around us? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on other thrilling true crimes you may not have heard of until we open the next case together.